Hi, this is Joe Rabil. Welcome back to Stock Talk. As a reminder, as you're sending over your stock requests, we got a decent amount of stock requests this week, so I'm real pleased about that. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that I don't want you to think that I only analyze momentum plays or stocks that are breaking out. I have helped money managers. In fact, a lot of the money managers that I have helped over the years have been value players. So I'm happy to help people who are interested in buying stocks when they're kind of down and out and maybe looking to turn around. And I think I can help in that regard in terms of improving your timing from that standpoint. So don't feel like if you're sending over your request that it has to be something that's hitting a new 52-week high or anything like that. So I just want to make sure I got that point across. Let's look at today's agenda. So we're going to talk about multiple timeframes for just a minute or two. I want to give you a little bit of background in terms of some guidelines, and maybe you could call them rules if you want. I think it'll help you as we progress further into the show. And then the bulk of today is going to be spent on going through individual stocks and the requests that came over. So before I get into that, I just want to take a quick minute to mention my service. Now, the Stock Talk show is about me analyzing your picks. And what I do in my service is provide 30 years of experience going through thousands of charts each week and giving you my stock picks. And I send that out in the form of, I have two reports every week and then some others scattered throughout the month. And there's a lot of research associated with it, giving you some different ideas with respect to sector action, as well as a position sheet every week for every single stock that's the bigger stocks in the Russell 1000. The main reason why I wanted to bring this up is that I am providing for people watching the show. When you sign up for the individual monthly package, I'm offering $50 for 2 months. So you get an opportunity for $50 to get 2 months of my research through the trial code using Stock Talk. If you type that in, you'll get the first 2 months for $50. So you get an opportunity to kind of evaluate the research and see if it's good for you. So I wanted to make sure I brought that up. Let's go ahead and get into multiple timeframes. So these are the characteristics or rules or guidelines that I want you to kind of keep in the back of your mind as we progress through this show over time. Each time frame does have its own structure. Each time frame has its own support and resistance. I'm going to pull up a chart in a second and show you these in a little bit more detail. The higher time frame overrules the lower time frame, and then momentum confirms price in each time frame. I'm a big believer that you got to follow price first and use the momentum indicators as a confirmation, not the other way around. And then we're going to look for combinations. Now I'm going to do that as we progress through the individual stocks. So let's go ahead and look at a chart here. I have actually taken the name off the chart and the time frames. I just want you to start thinking in terms of higher time frames and lower time frames, or larger and smaller, however you want to look at it. Usually when I'm looking at a longer term time frame, I'm going to call it the higher time frame. And when I'm looking at a shorter term time frame, I'll call it the lower time frame. But and the other thing that I do want to mention here is that I like to use a 1-to-5 ratio. So just to keep it simple, if I'm looking at a weekly chart, that would be the higher time frame. And if I look at a 1-to-5 ratio, a daily works perfect because there's 5 days in a week. So I like to keep that pretty close to that 1-to-5. So the monthly and a weekly work pretty well together as well. Now I will go from to a 1-to-6. When I do a daily and an hourly, it's more like a 1-to-6, a little bit more than that, 6.5. But the reality is it works. My approach to using multiple timeframes and the types of signals that I'm going to show you work pretty well from that standpoint. So if I'm talking about each time frame has its own structure, if we look at the left side, I have outlined the structure, the highs and lows of the chart based on this higher time frame. And this is what I'm talking about. So if you look at this price structure, and this is happening at the same time, on the right side, it's the same stock with a lower time frame structure. And you can see the more frequent highs and lows on the lower time frame. So this is a structure that has been showing, this price structure has been making higher highs and higher lows, and then just recently took out and made a lower high and then a lower low. all this did on the left side was make a peak and pull back. So we've got two different price structures taking place at the same time, just based on different time frames. If you look at the support and resistance, what I've done is actually at the turning points for each one of these reversal levels, I've drawn in a horizontal line, at least the most recent ones, on both time frames to show where support and resistance. And these are sort of like energy points, key levels. And if I'm on the higher time frame and I have a reversal point up here, then on the lower time frame, that's going to be very important. If I take a trade, let's just say this is a weekly chart and this is a daily chart. If I take a trade off the daily chart, I know that these levels, these turning points, these energy points are very important to keep an eye on the higher time frame, just to know where my support and resistance levels are. So this can be used pretty well together. The other point I want to make sure I make is that the higher time frame does overrule the lower time frame, meaning that if you want to use these energy points as support and resistance on the lower time frame, and they should determine where you're buying and where you're selling, and not trying to get through these energy points. The other thing is that a lot of times in the way that I look at things, sometimes you'll have a pattern that looks really good on the lower time frame, but looks awful on the higher time frame. You don't want to fight that higher time frame. You always want to take trades that look good in conjunction with the higher time frame. Finally, we want momentum to confirm price. So you can see here, I've got MACD and the ADX. And what's interesting, you can see on this left time frame, the higher time frame, the MACD has been moving up and it's kind of stretched away from the zero line. And then if we go over on this time frame, it's actually sort of made a lower high and a lower low, and it's back at the zero line. So it was overbought and it's already pulled back. So these momentum indicators can help in determining where we stand from a momentum standpoint, as well as overbought, oversold, and that type of thing. And we're going to use that in conjunction with price. In terms of combinations, I'm going to keep I'll show you that in a minute. When I talk about combinations, I'm really just looking for some confluence amongst different time frames. And if we can have that, I think it really improves our chances of improving our timing and lowering our risk. Let's go ahead and start looking at some individual stocks, and I think a lot of this will make more sense to you. So just to repeat from last time, I've got a monthly chart in the bottom left, weekly in the bottom right, a daily in the upper right, and then I have another weekly chart with the relative strength versus the S&P and a moving average, a 30-period moving average of the relative strength on this chart here. So it's a good look. It gives me a pretty good representation of what I'm trying to do when I'm analyzing a stock. So we're starting with Disney. Disney was a leftover from last week. So just so you know, if I don't get through all the stock picks, all the requests, what doesn't get covered will be added to the top of the list the next week. So let's start out with Disney. A strong move. I'm going to pop up this weekly chart. Strong move to the upside with really good momentum characteristics based on this ADX. Got a really high reading, and now we're sort of correcting back. And we've broken the 18-week line, and that line has started to roll over. So I would put this in a long-term uptrend because you're above the rising 18-month, but you got stretched away, and now we're in sort of a corrective process to try and work our way back a little bit closer to the 18-month. I'm not saying it's going to come all the way down to that level, but it probably needs a little bit more time. And the MACD should make it back towards the zero line, I would think, before we're ready to get going again. So probably want to be patient. One thing that I would suggest is looking for this green DI, the strength of the buyers on the daily chart, to show up again by breaking out above 25 and above these red peaks. That should signify when the buyers are really getting ready to step back in. Let's go to ARKK. And so this is one of Kathy Wood's funds, made a big move, got kind of climatic up here. On the monthly, I've drawn in the Fib grid. And if you notice, the pullback was right to a perfect 50% retracement of the last big up move. So as we came back, now again, look at how we got stretched away from the 18-week. We were stretched away from the 18-month. were kind of also look at how far the MACD got away from the zero line. And so we're going through this corrective process, and notice how now the MACD has worked its way back to the zero level. It's a very important level if you go back over time. In strong stocks, typically that zero line will provide pretty good support. And also these big round numbers at 100, we got a nice support level and a bounce off that, which again was the 50% retracement. I think this is going to have some resistance up here at 130. If you notice, the 18-week is still declining, so I prefer to see this to kind of cup around and saucer around and maybe see price come and pull back towards that. That's really what I would be looking for over the next 2 weeks to a month as a potential opportunity here. Adobe is coming out of a consolidation pattern. Again, made a really big move to the upside, consolidated sideways, and MACD was overbought and then worked its way back to the zero line. So we've got a stock on a monthly chart that has continued to respect the 18-month line over and over again, and we just recently came back pretty close to that. And the momentum characteristics are pretty good. So we've broken out here. I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves in the short term. It's probably due for some kind of a pullback, but this is a pretty solid breakout in a stock that really hasn't done a whole lot over the course of the last 9 months. NOW is it's pretty interesting. If you look at what happened, we made a lower high and then a lower low on the weekly chart. MACD kind of came down closer to the zero line. So it looks like you took out this prior low and you were breaking down. But if you look at the monthly chart, all that's been happening is that every time you pull back, you've been finding support at this 18-month line. If you had any question as to whether the monthly chart is a useful tool or the 18-month line is a useful tool, please look at NOW, or you could look at Adobe, go look at Microsoft, and look at how strong of support the 18-month line provides in the long-term trend. So these are the zones where we want to be looking for signs of a turnaround or buyers stepping in. So it gives a pretty big advantage from that standpoint. So again, we've made a pretty big move now from this 460 point all the way up to 555 or so. We've kind of filling this gap. So I would like to see this consolidate a little bit on the daily, back and fill a little bit in the near term. And then I think that sets the stage for more upside here. It doesn't look like this. This actually looks like a long-term bullish trend that just went through a correction. So JP Morgan, this is a pretty good example of how you can use two time frames together. So the monthly chart got extended away from the 18-month line. Price got farther away. And then if we go down to the lower time frame, MACD was hitting new highs and then hitting new highs all the way up until this point. And then price pulled back here and then made a new high. And MACD pulled back but didn't make a new high. So this failed to confirm here at this point. So now I'm seeing extended away on the monthly chart, and I'm getting divergence on the lower time frame. This is a good combination for you to be on the lookout for some type of a reversal pattern. Now, I like to look for price to sort of confirm with a reversal bar or something like that, or I'll go down to the daily chart and maybe timing a little bit. But these are the types of combinations you want to be on the lookout for. Now, we've had some pretty big selling here, a couple pretty big bars to the downside, and the support should come in somewhere around 140, 145. But based on how violent the selling was, I think this is going to take some time. Even though we're not that far away from support, I think you got to give this a little bit of time to correct and consolidate a little bit further before getting interested again. Wells Fargo, another bank, a little bit different because it didn't make it to new highs. It was sort of a laggard and then really kicked into gear. Now we're getting up into a problem area. It's a lot easier to see on the monthly. We broke above the 40 resistance, but now we're coming into some more resistance up into the mid-high 40s. And so I would expect this to maybe consolidate a little bit. It might try and challenge that high up there, and it's possible we'll make it all the way up to 50, but just based on the fact that the 18-month is still declining here, and we haven't really turned the MACD back above the zero line on the monthly, I think this is going to hit some turbulence, probably need more time to consolidate in the near term before it's really ready to go again. Freeport. So another example of a stock that gets stretched away to the upside. Now, you could have argued that this was getting stretched away at 30, and yet it carried all the way up to like 45. So the way I look at it is once you get extended on one time frame, you go to the lower time frame and look for signs of momentum divergence. If you notice, the MACD confirmed all the way up to this peak, and then we got a pullback, made a new high here, and MACD didn't confirm on this last peak. So that's the kind of combination you're looking for, extended on one time frame and then divergence on the lower time frame. And I think that can be a really useful tool in determining where a stock is running out of gas. And so now we're coming back towards support. I think there's probably support in the lower 30s. Again, just based on the way the violence of the sell-off was, the break of the 18-week, and how big a bar that was, I'd expect this to take a little bit more time. Roku, really strong. I'm just going to look at this weekly. So really powerful move that took place. And then actually when the economy started to look better and a lot of the economically sensitive stocks started to play a little bit better, people took profits in this and it worked its way down to 300. Pretty big decline, bounced around a little bit and then undercut this 300 area, but didn't have any follow through to the downside. And so we've made a pretty nice pattern. I'm going to talk in the future about an undercut and rally pattern. But what happened here is we took out this prior low and then rallied up immediately. There was no downside follow through. This is something to be on the lookout for, especially in a volatile stock like this. So what's taken place now is we made a pretty strong move. I, again, would like to see this cup around a little bit, the 18-week, and maybe look for a pullback towards that over the course of the next couple weeks as a next buying opportunity. There was definitely some selling up here, these big red bars to the downside. So I have a hard time believing this is just going to skyrocket to new highs without some type of a consolidation or pullback along the way. So I'd be on the lookout for that over the next few weeks. MACD is in a pretty good position. It's about to cross or is crossing the signal line right now. So we're getting in a position here to expect higher prices. I don't like the run that it's had in the short term from an entry standpoint. ALB, big move to the upside and is just working off in a consolidation pattern to the side. It's working more, so we're working off an overbought condition by going sideways rather than down. Meanwhile, the MACD and the ADX are working off. They're kind of coming to the downside, and I'd like to see MACD come down a little bit more. But ADX has gone from a pretty high rating all the way down to 16. So we're definitely working off the overbought condition just by going sideways. And one thing to keep an eye on when the two moving averages get closer together, that's usually a sign. Sometimes the 18 will cross back down below the 40, but in this case, I bet they just get a little bit closer together, and then this is probably going to be ready to go again. So something to be on the lookout for. Amazon, similar to Adobe in terms of the big move to the upside, and MACD got way overdone and has worked off the overbought condition by coming back down towards the zero line. And notice how ADX was overbought and has now come all the way back down to 19. So we had a reading up here on the ADX around 50 or 60, and it spent a significant amount of time, probably about 9 months, just kind of working off the overbought condition by going sideways. I view that as a constructive pattern. This does not look like distribution to me. This looks like a pause in an ongoing uptrend. And, it hasn't broken out yet. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Now, you got to be careful with these stocks look at where this move started on the monthly. This is not early. You have to recognize that. And when you're looking at stocks like these, just be careful and make sure you understand what you're dealing with. I would trade this off the weekly and the daily. I would be a lot less inclined to be looking at this from a long-term standpoint based on how far it's moved and how many signals have already taken place. This goes back to the longevity of a trend. And the longevity of this trend on a monthly chart makes me a little nervous. However, when I look at what's taking place on a weekly, daily time frames, I think this looks pretty attractive. Bristol-Myers, you can see on the monthly chart, we've been trying to kind of cup around, and it's gotten these bars just kind of, there's been some wicks and movement, but there's not a lot of volatility, really. When you look at the size of the bars, they're not very big, and we have a low ADX condition on the monthly, and we have a low ADX condition on the weekly chart. Also notice how green DI is holding above red while we're going sideways. That's a good sign, and it would make me inclined to believe I would probably be willing to buy the breakout at 68. That would be taking out these peaks when I have green above red and a long period of low ADX where all three lines are below the 25 line. You're really storing energy here, but there's no sense jumping the gun. I would wait for the breakout above 68. There should be plenty of movement after that happens. DXCM, I want to start with the monthly chart. Big, huge move to the upside and then had kind of a violent decline down. And when I see that, I know I don't want to buy the first pullback to the 18-month. Normally, you're going to spend more time sort of, correcting or at least testing this low. And we did that recently. Now, if we look at the weekly chart, we again had we were extended away on in July, August timeframe. We were extended away from the zero line on the MACD, and then it worked its way back down and really has been just going sideways and bouncing around the zero line. And ADX has been low. But look at what's happened recently. We've got green DI starting to pop here. I think this is a good sign. So again, I would put this in the category of long-term uptrend and going through a correction, and now it looks like the correction is starting to end. So I believe that is a good sign for this stock. It's starting to move higher. I'd probably, because it has made a little bit of a move in the short term, especially just recently over the last 4 or 5 days, maybe look for some kind of a pullback or a consolidation. But this is one I'd be watching for some kind of weakness as an opportunity. INFY, first we can look at how far big a move this has made on the monthly chart, and it's gotten pretty extended. Now the momentum is in pretty good shape, but because it's pretty far away, you got to be careful about any kind of new buying here. I would actually be inclined to start looking for a potential exit point if I'm looking for some type of a profit-taking period for partial profits. MACD has not confirmed this new high. Now, just because we've gone to a new high and MACD hasn't, does not mean that we have divergence. We have potential divergence. We're looking for a sign of sellers coming in or some kind of a reversal to confirm a reversal pattern here. So something to be on the lookout for as this moves higher, because if price keeps going higher, it's possible MACD will confirm. But right now, because it's making this move and MACD is still pretty far from a new high, you want to be on the lookout for signs of a reversal. You could look for that on a daily chart if you want. Qualcomm looks pretty interesting to me. I've been waiting for this to pull back. It hasn't made it back to the 18-month line, but I think 125, it looks like really good support. We tested it twice already. The 18-week line has come down below the 40-week line. And that is a good sign to me that we've worked off the overbought condition on the higher time frame. Also, notice how MACD was overbought and has now worked its way back to the zero line, and ADX, which was up around 60, has dropped all the way down to 11. So we've taken a stock that was in a really strong, powerful trend and worked off the overbought condition, and now I think it's trying to set itself up. I'd actually like to see it take out these two prior peaks up around 138 with some volume, preferably with green DI confirming. And that suggests that we're going to probably start a new move to the upside. Now, if you're buying this like based on options or something like that, you need to be careful about how far of a run this can make in that period of time. So like if you're buying the July options at 150, you just got to be careful. And I would probably be looking at this prior peak here at 145, because if I own the options in the low 130s or something like that, and I have the 150 options, I'm going to make some money if this moves up towards this prior peak. But that's probably where my target would be if I have the July options. If I have more time on the options, then I might want to give it more of a chance to try and break out there. But you're going to probably want to take a move to this upside, and take a very hard look at this prior peak. So I had a question about that in terms of the options, so I wanted to answer that. OVV has made a nice move here. This is an energy stock that has bounced off the 18-week. with good momentum characteristics. Energy is trading pretty well here. The one thing I would, just warn you here is that we have made a pretty big move. We're coming up against some resistance here in the 33, 34, 35 area. I think I'd be aware of that. If we make another move in here, I'd make sure if I'm long this stock that I'd probably be taking at least partial profits at that level. PAHC. I like the way this is turning around. I'm just going to show you on the weekly chart. We had this declining phase, and then we went through sort of a sideways period, and now we're turning back to the upside. We have come, this isn't a gap, but look at how violent this move was to the downside. We've come back to this level at 30. I think this is a good spot for this to back and fill a little bit. There should be support right around 26, 27 in this zone, somewhere in there. That would be kind of the next opportunity, I think, on some kind of a pullback. Good ADX reading on the upside, which tells me that there's probably more upside coming after a pullback. ISRG is another stock, and I just want to look at the weekly on this. Big move to the upside. We're continuing to make higher highs and higher lows, but if you notice on this peak, ADX did not confirm, and it didn't even get above 25. So it makes me a little leery when a stock makes new highs in price, has been in an uptrend, and makes new highs in price, and is unable to confirm with ADX at least getting above 25. I mean, I prefer to see it get up to 30, but getting to 25 is kind of like a bare bones minimum. And in this case, it hasn't been doing that. So I would probably be drawing a trend line in here, and if we break the trend line without ADX getting above 25, then I would be looking for a much more significant corrective pattern to develop. Let's look at Snap. So Snap is interesting, and again, I'm just going to keep this weekly chart up because we made this big move, and look at how strong a reading we got, up to like almost 70 on an ADX basis. Now, it's telling you trend strength, but it's also telling you it's overbought or overheated at that point. And we can get confirmation from when MACD gets extended above the zero line and we have an ADX reading above 50. That's telling you that you're getting a little late, at least in the near term. Now, this is on a weekly chart, and what we've done is spent time working sideways and consolidating, digesting gains, I think in a pretty healthy manner. We came down to the round number at 50 and bounced off it a few times, been working sideways. MACD didn't make it back down to the zero line, but in this case, it looks like the moving averages are not going to make it all the way together. We're not going to get the 18 and the 40 to come together before this gets going again. Look at this daily chart. And notice how we have this low ADX pattern. It's been low ADX for about 3 or 4 months. Green is above red, and now we're getting a breakout. So from a short-term standpoint, I really like the looks of this breakout pattern. It really broke out yesterday, and we're getting some follow-through today. You got to be conscious of the fact that there's a lot of volatility taking place. We don't have a full-fledged confirmation that everyone's hopping back into growth and we're getting a big run to the upside. So you got to put your stops in place, but this is a pretty attractive pattern in the way that it's developed on the daily chart. That is our time for today. I want to make sure that I mention that you can find my research on rabilstockresearch.com, or you can contact me at joe@rabilstockresearch.com as well. Also, contact me on LinkedIn if you want. And also, I want to make sure you send in your symbol requests to stocktalk@stockcharts.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.